Good morning. I am Morgan Cole with the Brightline Podcast. It's 10:40 on Monday, March 30th, and I've got a guest joining me today who's Adam Bamford with the Bamford Insurance Agency. We're going to talk about insurance and how you can stay covered in these uncertain times. There's obviously a lot going on right now. This is just pretty wild, pretty unprecedented. Everybody knows that. I am entirely by myself up here at my office, and it seemed a little more somber today than other days for some reason. And I thought that the rainy weather and being dark outside was almost the right mood. But we're all going to get through this. We're going to stay on top of everything we have to do. We're going to stay positive, and we're gonna all get through this together. Let me bring in my guest here, and I'll introduce him, and we can kind of get talking about what's going on. So, Adam, I've got you live with me here now. How's it going, man?
Pretty good, pretty good. This
Good.
is
So,
hey Morgan, I really appreciate the opportunity to come on your show. I'm just hoping when you mentioned we're going to talk about insurance today, you didn't lose half your audience.
no, this is the most exciting thing that anyone could possibly deal with. A little backstory here. Adam and I went to high school together, more than high school, known each other since about seventh grade, and grew up in the Woodlands, and went to middle school and junior high, and high school, and long time. So it's really fun to have you
Really
on the show
making me
here.
feel old.
Yes. Well, man, I mean, I talk to people about stuff and I think about how long ago something was, and I'm like, I'm qualified to say that was a long time ago at this point.
As I like to tell people, if you've hired somebody and you can remember those times from when they were born, then you're like, all right, now I'm getting old.
That's funny. Yeah, Cole, who works for me, I actually am confident I've known him since he was 6. So it's pretty funny. It's pretty funny. So, but
Um,
you mentioned losing everybody, Adam. I went through the so Adam, FYI, and I want you to tell us about this. But you are in North Texas, so a little outside of our market here. But we talked after I did my last podcast, and I was like, man, this would be great. We deal with properties all over the state of Texas. Adam's an insurance expert. Let's talk about insurance, and it's one of my least favorite things to deal with. But I think that at the same time, having a good relationship with an insurance agent who can be there for you, who can provide good answers and good information, is a really valuable person in your life.
yeah, no, it's unfortunately some people do try to avoid insurance like the plague. No pun intended there. Um,
Careful.
and While we're on that subject, just prayers have been going out to all the first responders, the medical professionals. Obviously, we're seeing areas regionally in New York, in the north, really getting hit and impacted by the coronavirus. So we
Yeah.
are taking that seriously, and prayers up to all those. And I have talking to an EMT last week, and it certainly is real. I think we're fortunate down here not to have this increased population as some of the areas like New York, so
You
higher
bet.
density. But nonetheless, yeah, no insurance. It's funny. Sometimes people will ask, "Hey, did you see yourself getting into insurance?" I'm like, absolutely not. I tried to avoid it actually, but
Yeah.
when I ultimately got into the business, that's where I found out these are amazing people. These are more than insurance companies. These are highly innovative companies that have to be nimble and innovative into the future because things are rapidly evolving, as I'm sure we'll talk about today.
Sure. No, no doubt. No doubt. So bring us up to speed with business, but before that, I mean, how are you doing? How's your family doing? I mean, how's the sudden change that we're all going through treating you and your world?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Morgan, and hope to hear a little bit about how you guys are doing as well. Obviously, it's an adjustment, right? Business professionals, it goes through your mind if something, an interruption, didn't think it'd be something of this nature, but you do kind of think about how would I operate personally, my family, if some kind of situation were to come up where life is interrupted, right? So it's an adjustment for everybody, and I think just generally speaking, it's going to, as time goes on, President Trump announced another extension this just yesterday. So I think it's going to continue to be an adjustment. But for us personally, my wife, she's awesome. She's been doing a brunt of all. I've got an 8-year-old his online learning. So
Yeah.
I couldn't do it without her, and she works as well. So she's been a tremendous support as we've gotten this agency off the ground. But we're doing well. I've got one 8-year old, and hope all is well on your end.
We're
It's all of us are in this together, right?
We are, man. Yeah, we're doing okay. My wife, Casey, you obviously know her. We all went to school together. She's home with the kids, and even though she's a stay-at-home mom, I mean, even that's an enormous change because while our kids would either both generally be at the preschool program that they're in, or maybe they would be with my mom or Casey's mom or dad during the day. We're not able to interact with anybody like y'all aren't, and so we can't go drop them off, and it's sad that their grandparents can't visit them, and it's a challenge when everything that we've done with kids for the last 5 years has involved oh, I'm going to go run an errand, or I'm going to go to an appointment, I'm going to drop my kids off. We don't have that right now, and Casey and I were actually talking about that yesterday. I mean, that's been one of the hardest things. Is it's just been us, our house, our family members, and there's no time off anymore, which love being with the kids, but at the same time it's like, gosh, it would be really nice to leave them somewhere for 4 hours and go do something as just an adult.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel real, right?
Yeah, it's a good way
But
of
to your
putting it.
point, luckily with technology, I actually got my Pledge Brothers together on Saturday night. We had 15 of us on a Zoom call,
Nice.
and between that and using FaceTime on iPhone with the grandparents and
Yeah.
calling the twin sister in Denver, it makes it a little bit more manageable keeping those connections with family given technology today. But
It's
yeah,
amazing.
it's still not easy when you're not face to face.
I agree, but yeah, we'll get through it. So okay. So the reason everybody's at home and the reason that everybody is dealing with all this right now is this illness, and it's very disruptive. And one thing that I think a lot of people have wanted to know, and maybe if everybody else just hangs on for a little bit here and pays attention to this part of it, the thing that a lot of businesses have, either because they wanted it or because they have a loan that required it, is business interruption insurance. Um, we have some specialized insurance providers that serve our RV parks and mobile home parks, and I've reached out to them a little bit about that, and they're like, we don't know yet exactly what is or isn't covered, and people are kind of looking at it. But can you tell our viewers, can you tell me on the types of business interruption insurance that you provide? Is this covered? Is this business interruption that is covered right now?
Yeah, no, it's a very fair and relevant question, given the state of things. Just generally speaking, well, first I should preface every insurance company handles coverage differently. So, as a professional, I advise any specific claim situation, you definitely need to reach out to your specific insurance company. But generally speaking, what we're seeing is as far as things listed with business interruption, it's usually by name peril, which is theft or windstorm. So generally speaking, we see these not being things that are covered.
Mm-hmm.
But and if you look at the news, there's some large lawsuits that were established last week, and so there's certainly some disruption with the fact that a lot of these things aren't being covered with COVID-19. But yeah, so again, I always advise just to reach out to your specific insurance company. But generally speaking, no, it's not something covered because it's just not a listed peril
Yeah.
within the policy.
And even if it was somehow covered, even if business insurance covered it, I was kind of thinking through conversations I've had with our carriers about mobile home and RV parks, and basically we always get a business interruption coverage with an extended period of indemnity, and the way that winds up working is if there is a named storm that comes through, or a fire or whatever it is, and it causes all of those lots to be not operational, not online, not able to produce, they'll cover us from the moment of the storm until we get them repaired. And then the extended period of indemnity that we usually get will cover us from then. That one picks up from the moment that they're repaired, and it takes us until we get them released. A period of time, of course, being the limit there. But I was thinking, I was like, there's nothing preventing any of our mobile home lots from being leased right now. There's nothing preventing our RV lots. Well, the RV lots are a little different, not in Texas, not for us, but I do know that some RV parks have been told to close.
Right. We talked about this earlier before we jumped on this call. Yeah, there's going to be interruption, right? You're a property owner. People are going to struggle to pay for their rents. But we also talked about the financial institutions, the banks, really wanting to work. And that comes back to how great this country is, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we're not going to let some disruption of this nature bring down the economy. And I think it's fantastic what a lot of these large financial institutions are willing to do to keep things afloat, right? And business operations flowing. So when we do get in front of this, we can get back to normal. But there's a lot of government assistance, obviously, with the $1 trillion stimulus package. So if you're a business owner, small business owner, reach out to your accountant for help on seeing what you can do to keep things fluid
Yeah.
operationally.
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. I mean, and I think kind of like the conversation that we had previously, and I think that I talked to my last guest on the show about was, I mean, I'm a proponent of making round world deals. I think that if from a top down effect, I mean, if the government's going to provide relief to a lender, I would hope that a lender would use that to enable themselves to provide relief to a borrower. If the government's going to provide relief to us as a landlord, we're gonna do whatever we can to use that to provide relief to our tenants. But at the same time, in the round world scenario, we would rely on tenants to reach out and see what kind of relief they can get from their creditors or from the government to provide them something, because you can't just stop. You can't just say, oh, I'm gonna just sit here and I'm gonna let everybody come to me and fix my problem. I mean, people are gonna have to use every resource they can get to solve these problems, and we're all gonna have to work together for that.
Yeah, once that ball rolls, we're going to push it, but we can't continue to let that roll and get out of control, because then we're just in a bad spiral situation. To your point,
That's
but
right.
no,
That's
back
right.
to the coverage. I'm impressed with your knowledge, but actually, I'm not surprised.
Well,
It's
yeah.
it's funny. This is really awesome. When I saw that you had this podcast, I was blown away with how well done you have it.
Thank you.
It's funny, Morgan. When I was thinking about you, why you're perfect for if you're asked that question, is it better to know a little about a lot or a lot about a little? You fit both those molds. Like, because there's a lot of people that do podcasts out there, and it's just like this guy. This is ridiculous. This guy knows nothing. Like, he's struggling to get through this hour. So congratulations to you.
Thanks, man.
Just side note, I meant to tell you that this is really cool, and
Thank
you
you.
know more about technology than anybody. So there's so much wizardry going around back
Oh,
there.
there's a lot over here, man. There's a lot, but thanks, man. No, I mean, and it's cool, and I love talking to my friends and seeing we're all at the point now where we've done things long enough that we can be nearly experts, extremely proficient, if not somewhat of an expert. And so I think it's amazing, when I talk to somebody like yourself, who we haven't really, we live in different cities when we see each other at weddings or what have you, but it's like, you're out there establishing your thing and you're on your path doing something that's in the real world. And I think it's really cool that all of us are contributing to the real world, and we're becoming the generation who is taking charge and running things.
That's
So,
right.
but speaking of
Somebody's
running
got to do
things,
it.
tell me about running your business, the Bamford Insurance Agency. I mean, tell
Yeah,
me
yeah,
how that got going and what that's all about.
yeah. I got real creative with the name of my entity, as you can tell.
You
But
bet, man.
no, we I appreciate the question. So we launched in September, Q4 of last year. October really was our first month, as we started accumulating some of the independent or companies, insurance companies out there. I didn't get all the appointments right away, but that's when they started to filter in. So we've been going strong since Q4. Previous to that, I had a great career at Liberty Mutual Insurance Company out of Boston, who's a major player in the insurance industry, obviously top 100. Phenomenal company, still know a lot of people back there. I'm very grateful for that experience. I'm unique in what I'm doing now with my experience, because I was a captive agent right out of college for 6 years or so. So I know the business as an agent, and then I decided to pursue management. So also know that's the operational side of running an insurance business as well. So I've kind of got that dual experience there, and do feel grateful for that. But yeah, my experience at Liberty was phenomenal. I mean, here's a company that was looking to break the Fortune 100 back in '06, and then just the ball just started rolling. I think they're hovering in the 70s, but it wasn't. It was organic growth, but then they had large acquisitions like Safeco Insurance. So
Mm-hmm.
just phenomenal people, and I had a lot of pride working there. My wife and I, it was a tough decision for us to, do what we're doing now. But my wife and I kind of put our heads together and said, hey, if we're going to do this, let's go all in on it. In an independent agency in a growing community up here in North Texas. So we're having a lot of fun. We're learning a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's certainly stumbling blocks, but that's fun. And at the end of the day, your customers drive your business. It sounds cliche, but you're not in business without your customers. So we're listening to them and trying to deliver, an unmatched experience while growing our business in the same hand.
I think that's awesome. I mean, stepping out after having worked for companies, corporations, large companies for so many years, and then deciding, hey, I can do this. I can provide a unique service to my friends who will become my clients, my contacts who will become my clients. And working on that is really it's a leap. But it sounds like you've been able to just nail that, and it's really taken off, which is amazing. That's awesome. Congratulations.
Absolutely. Hey, I appreciate that. We're
Yeah.
we're certainly excited.
That's cool. That's really cool. So what so basically, I mean, I guess, I've got a couple of notes here that I'd love to go over with you. But with you doing this, with you having your company, and you're an independent agent now, what does this mean for a person who maybe a person followed you? They used to be with you at another company and they're now at this other company. Maybe it's just a person who wants to understand what is the difference between using an independent insurance agent versus someone who I think you said was brand locked. What did you call it? Your you said you
Captive.
captive. There you go.
Yeah.
So the difference between an independent agent and someone who's captive. I mean, tell us what does it mean if someone comes to the Bamford Insurance Agency versus going to a specific branded insurance company?
Yeah, so in the industry, they refer to different ways of going to market as the omni-channel approach. I didn't know much about the independent world. I've obviously ran across it early on in my career as a captive agent with Liberty Mutual, and it always presented challenges being a captive agent. Now every company obviously has their niche of customers that they look to, which is profitability, right? Those less risky, those more profitable is what every insurance company, because at the end of the day, they are in business, right?
Sure.
But yeah, so I didn't know too much about it. So it's been a learning experience, and I'm having a lot, like I said, I'm having a lot of fun. It is great because maybe one company isn't a fit for someone for whatever reasons. I'll tell you, the underwriting, it's amazing. A lot of it is behind the scenes, but the technology, and we'll probably get into that a little bit, is what's evolving. So gone are the days where they maybe looking at 100 variables. Now there's thousands of different variables. So
Wow.
yeah, which helps make sure that risk is appropriately assigned to the individual or the family or the business, right? So you pay for your profitability, if you will, or you pay for your responsibility to a degree. So things have really evolved, but yeah, no, it's as far as in the independent world, it's been a lot of fun to maintain relationships with Pretty Mutual, and also meet, work with great other newer companies for me, such as Travelers,
Yeah.
Hartford. A lot of innovate. I'm working with 5 to 6 companies down in Houston, actually, area on the property side that are highly competitive, because that's, generally speaking, has been a tough market with some of the exposures of Katrina and Harvey.
You bet.
So yeah, just having options for customers where I can present them, different options and let them ultimately decide what works for them. But yeah, just having some variables to help people, it's awesome.
I found in my own experience having working with a person who's not captive has been helpful. I mean, we have some styles of properties that require a specialized carrier. Like in our mobile home parks, you really have to have a specialized carrier for that. In the RV parks, you've got to have that too for competitive coverage. But in my own rental houses, in cars, my house I live in, and stuff like that, I used to use an individual carrier, and I loved it. It was great. I got incredible service, but after a few years of looking at my insurance costs go up and up and up and up, I reached out to a couple of people and I went through the brain damage for like 6 weeks of talking to like 5 different people and getting all these quotes. And I now have, 2 houses with this carrier and 3 houses with that carrier, and then my home and auto with this other carrier, and an umbrella. I think I learned that had to be linked to the primary home or the auto because no one wanted to carry all that stuff together. But it was like, man, you guys provide extreme value in saving people money, especially if you have I would say simple, but especially if you have a complex scenario where you do want to have something more than just a typical, I have a home and a house. I mean, a home and an auto. If you want to have life coverage or umbrella coverage or investment properties or business coverage and stuff like that, you need someone who has multiple lines and also is knowledgeable about all the different things that go in and out of it, who can work for you. And I'm sure that that's what you've created with the Bamford Insurance Agency.
Yeah, no, I mean, you said it right. Someone that's knowledgeable. So you can get that on both ends of the spectrum there. You do want someone that knows what they're talking about, to make, because the last thing that you want to happen is you have that claim and all of a sudden then you're finding out that, oh, I didn't, that agent didn't put that endorsement, but has the ability to offer that endorsement, right? So
Yeah.
That's what differentiates a good agent from a bad one, right? Just making sure that you understand what you have. So that's most important.
So it's interesting, like I said, I mean, the company I was with before, there's nothing about it I didn't like. I know that I had great coverage. I know that I had great service. The price just was not competitive at the point that I decided to leave. But when I started having, I think I had 3 different people who were independent insurance agents who were sending me different proposals and things like that. And as we got into the very end details, and I was like, oh, well, hey, on this house, they're $200 less, but on this other house, they're $100 more. Someone started pointing fingers and saying, hey, did they accurately report the age of the roof? Because apparently there's some people in the industry who assume that nothing will ever be a problem, and they won't accurately report the age of a roof to try to get someone to have more competitive price coverage. And I brought that up to the person who won the business, and she goes, oh yeah, my old manager, when I came from North Carolina or wherever she came from, that was what she used to always do, is she would say that every roof was like only 7 years old, not that it was really 20 years old. And then I don't, that shouldn't be a concrete detail, but I think that was something that was going on and has gone on that people just omit to try to create more attractive quotes. I mean, are you knowledgeable about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously with my experience, I'll tell you this though. I mean, those people that do those kinds of things in our industry, they don't last long.
Yeah.
It's only a matter of time when there's a bad claim situation and they did something fraudulent, and then their E&O is catching up to them, right? Their errors in operation, emissions, excuse me.
Sure.
So to my point, there's people like that in every industry. I'm a believer in doing the right thing. And like I said, I don't worry about that because I know those folks that are doing those kinds of things, it's going to catch up to them. It's only a matter of time. I mean, the people that run the numbers are smart.
They are.
But yeah, I see it all the time. I saw it this morning.
Wow.
Yeah. So, whether it was a smart home discount on a home policy that someone applied, I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure we talked. You don't have a security system on your residential home there. So just wondered, do you have a smart device, on your water heater? So yeah, I certainly see it, and I point those things out, right? So, certainly you want to do the fiduciary responsibility and make sure that their coverage isn't in jeopardy because something isn't properly applied through the application process.
But like you said, I mean, that's how you provide good service, and that's how you remain an expert and you remain relevant. Like, that the people that have done that kind of stuff, I mean, A, that's unscrupulous, and B, it's not been beneficial for anybody. It's not beneficial for the person who got the insurance. It's not beneficial for the agent or the agency that wrote the insurance, and it's not beneficial for the carrier. I mean, this is not a way to in further furtherance of good business, this is not realistic. So, but
Yeah.
you mentioned a water heater device, you mentioned a smart home earlier. You talked about how there's 1,000 different data points that they track on people's houses, and that there are people and their risk. So I mean, tell me about that. I mean, what is the modern insurance landscape compared to maybe even a short number of years ago? I mean, how are y'all doing things in a tech driven environment society?
Yeah, as I mentioned, what I've seen as far as innovation, it has been incredible. Where things would change over the course of 5 years, we're seeing that sort of change year over year in the industry. And back to, rate, of course, people's premiums are going up, and that's what gives our industry a bad rub, right? And no one likes paying for something that's not, nice and shiny and tangible. But I'll tell you, having worked with a lot of now, this is a real thing. From the hailstorms up here in North Texas that just, they take out entire regional areas,
Yeah.
from the flooding, or the Harvey hurricane that came through. These companies are definitely being impacted on their bottom lines, right? So, they're really struggling to a degree, to price, for these events to a degree. So, they're getting better. And it's industry wide, so it's not necessarily one in company that's going up. But as far as the technology side, so there's been a lot of advances, to my point about underwriting, different things being looked at. The big buzzword now is telematics. Are you
Okay.
familiar with telematics? I'm sure
No.
you are. You're a tech guy.
I don't know what telematics is. I know what teletype is, but I don't know what telematics is. What is
Yeah,
that?
this is an increasingly connected world we live in, right? With the IoT, Internet of Things, everything's all these computer devices are starting to really talk to each other.
Yeah.
So that's where it's getting really exciting. And so with telematics, you think of Progressive was one of the industry leaders with their plug-in device, where they essentially evaluate different things,
Okay.
to see your risk level in
Okay.
an automobile.
Gotcha. So this is the telematics system is the data collecting, data logging system that transmits what you're doing in reality to the insurance agency, so they're able to assess you as a risk dependent on how you drive, right, or behave.
Yep, big data. You
Big
said it.
data. I'm not going to put
Um,
one of those in my car.
so
Uh,
I deal with that objection every single day. But I'm talking through it because this is way the industry is moving. Again, all the companies are adopting either the plug-in device or actually a phone application as well.
wow.
And then, I talked about these hailstorms and these hurricanes. How about the auto side? We got construction all over, North Texas here in Dallas. We've got distracted driving with cell phones. That 5 mile an hour bump, which used to be maybe a couple $100 or less, to fix the rear end of a car. Now you're essentially hitting a laptop with sensors
Oh yeah.
in the back of the vehicle. So that's what drives up rates. But in the same hand, if we get in front of these technologies, telematics, which is being, wrapped up into the vehicle itself, pretty soon you won't need the devices. But yeah, as far as, people, some people get up in arms. Oh, I don't want Big Brother, but it's like, oh well, if only you knew all the other things you're subscribed to and
Oh,
what
they know
information they have on
everything.
you.
I just
But
don't know if I want to volunteer the G-force data in my car to determine how I brake.
so
And
I was against it myself, and then I started thinking about it. I said, you know what? Uh, you got to trust the company that you choose, right? More than likely, if you chose to do your business with them, you trust them, right? So
yeah,
they are, they're promising. There's contracts. They're looking at certain things, but ultimately, I'm saying, I've got precious cargo that I'm taking around in my car, right? So if this helps me be a better driver, sign me up 100%.
yeah.
They're looking at braking, they're looking at acceleration, time of day driving. So like I said, if that means my family is less likely to be in a life altering incident on the road. So
That's
you
a
got to
really
look at it
good
in
point.
terms of that.
That's a very good point. I will. I'll take that under advisement the next time I ponder this. You know, I we're both young-ish. We're young to ourselves, I'm sure.
Well,
But when
thank you.
when I talk to people who I come in contact with, whether it's my parents or other people that are a similar age, I have a woman who works for us at one of our properties who's about 70, and I ask them about self-driving cars, and I ask people, would you allow a car to drive you? You know, my car won't drive itself, but if the cruise control's on, I can take my hands off the wheel and it'll stay in the lane and it'll turn and it'll slow down and it'll speed up and it'll do all that stuff. The guy at the dealership told me if I take a half full bottle of water and wedge it in the steering wheel, it'll think my hand's on the wheel and it'll just keep driving the whole time. It'll drive all the way to Dallas. I haven't tried that yet, but that's what the guy says. So, but you know, but I asked, I think maybe a couple years ago, I asked my dad and I was like, Dad, you know, would you let a car drive you? And he's like, no, there's no way. But here's my point, and I want to know your take on this. Outside of catastrophic failure, what I always think about, because I am a big guy, when I get in something like a bungee chair or a roller coaster or whatever, I think of catastrophic failure. I think of what happens when a bolt shears and this thing just fails and I die. Okay, so with the computer system crashing, to me that's catastrophic failure. But provided they have some sort of redundancy and whatever, I point out to people, I'm like, look, you know how when you drive, you look forward and then you look in the rearview mirror and look behind you, and then you look to the left and then you look to the right. That car does that simultaneously all of the time. It's processing images from all that all the time. And I'm like, you know how when you pull up to a stop sign and the stop line's there and there's like bushes and like you have to edge forward and get the nose of your car out on the street to be able to see if anybody's coming? Well, that car has a camera at the very tip of the bumper that's looking left and right. It doesn't have to edge out as far as you do to see what's going on.
Right.
My car has FLIR night vision. If I'm driving in the middle of nowhere and a deer is in the road, the dashboard changes, a FLIR night vision picture pops up and it outlines the deer in red. It does the same thing with people. And I can't even tell you how many people walk on the highway that you don't know are there. Like driving down the road, dark highway, all of a sudden it goes off. I'm like, why is there a person walking on the highway? It's 10 o'clock at night. But anyway, all of that having been said, how do these self-driving cars affect us? I mean, how does this affect insurance?
No, it really is phenomenal. So my wife has some of those higher tech gadgets in her car. I was a couple weeks ago, I was driving her car and I was zoning out on our spring break trip, and literally the car started beeping. I was like, how did the little coffee mug came up.
Yeah, take a break.
I'm like, are you kidding me? Like it knew like the exact minute I started dazing off.
Yeah.
So, you know, to answer your question specifically though, I mean, it's the evolution of things, right? So if we think about before cars, we had, you know, horses and buggies, and obviously I'm sure people said, oh, we're going to put a, you know, Model T Ford, we're going to put an engine and we're going to take this car to, or this show to 30 miles per hour. They're like,
you've
no,
lost your mind.
Yeah. Right. Like, so to your machine learning, with the telematics, you know, the technology in these cars, you know, what Musk has been able to do with Tesla, unbelievable stuff. Those things, a lot of times they're just learning, to your point, the areas, right? Now, obviously the problem is, you know, these newer cities have new roads, so they got to constantly be learning. But I do see a time where it will be self-driving. I think of, what's the movie with Sylvester Stallone, or he's the cop?
Oh gosh, not Fifth Element. It's not.
No. Anyway,
I can't
so
think of it.
they have but he's got the car and it's an auto drive, and then he, you know, I think it's Wesley Snipes takes it off auto drive, right?
Okay.
He's the villain.
Yes.
And that's what I see, you know. Everyone's gonna want that freedom, if they want to have some fun, right? Or take it off that auto track. But I would imagine, I don't know how near, but 20, 30, 50 plus years out, you know, you're hitting the highway and boom, it's synced in. If you talk about technology, so we talked about telematics, but 5G, speeding up wireless connections, you know, gone are the, you know, we're going to, down there in the woodlands, you don't see many telephone poles, right? So all that's getting embedded into the ground. So you're not going to have the cell towers anymore. You're going to have smart hub, regional areas. There's
Mm-hmm.
already smart buildings, which helps alleviate expenses and is
Mm-hmm.
better for economic speaking, but also the environment. And so all these things are going to evolve. So I could, I do see that, and a lot of people don't see it, but I do see, and that'll ultimately, in our industry, eliminate risk. But there's always going to be risk.
If you knew the cars could communicate to each other, and you knew, like, you must have watched, I mean, because you're in the industry, someone had to have shared a video of you, like a live readout of a Tesla, and every camera or every sensor from a Tesla. Have you ever seen this on a screen before while the thing's driving? It's
I have
basically,
not.
so basically someone's got like a camera view of like what you would see as a driver, and
Yeah.
then on the edges, on the periphery, they have like a box, and it's interpreting polygonal shapes of like signs. And then they have another box that's calculating the curve of the road, and then they have another box that's showing what's going on behind the car. And
Yep.
it's my point about that the car's doing all this stuff simultaneously. um I actually think that the only way it works is if it's not dependent on Google Maps, quote unquote, to know the roads exist. I think the car has to be able to make human level decisions of, I'm on a road,
Right.
and I know how to behave because I'm on a road.
Well, that's where the debate comes in, right? So, I guess someone will bring up, oh, if you're on the road and you run into grandma's and a lady with the stroller, like what's the decision there? So,
Yeah, I agree.
there's going to be a margin of error, just like anything.
Sure.
So, I think statistically speaking, if you look at, but it's controversial, right?
Yes.
If deaths are lowered, but yeah, that technology. My buddy's got a brand new Ford, one of those big ones, and we're reversing out of his driveway, and it's this drone view of his truck. I'm like,
Oh yeah.
how you got a drone above us? Like,
Yeah.
and if you've seen GoPro, what they're able to do now, like they're able to remove your arm,
I
or
haven't seen that.
it's unbelievable.
No,
So
it's
yeah, they got guys skydiving down a mountain, and it's like there's a drone in front of them. He's got
amazing.
it on the front, yeah. And then you see that with trailers, the cars.
Oh yeah, I've
Um,
seen that, like essentially like a see-through trailer.
so that's
I
what you're
have seen
talking
that.
about.
Yeah.
Unreal,
Well,
unreal.
but I think that basically, if we have, I was talking to my neighbor who's an emergency room director. Like, she's like the top dog at the emergency room, and we were talking about the deaths from the coronavirus and stuff, and we talked about that in Texas. You might know the statistic, but basically in like 15 years, there hasn't been a day when there hasn't been a death on the highways in Texas. And they've been
Yeah.
campaigning for a year or two, like, let's break the curve, let's break the trend, let's get us a day where no one dies. And I was telling her, I was like, gosh, with nobody driving anywhere, like they might finally get that one from this coronavirus thing. But if we know that we're going to have deaths on the road from people driving and making mistakes in Texas every day, we're not outwardly appalled about it because it's kind of part of life, I suppose. But one death from a car that makes a bad decision will create national outrage.
Yeah. No, I mean, if you think about it, just in terms of when you're on the road, a lot of times you're thinking about what am I doing right, to not run into that tree? What am I doing to not break and hit the person in front of me? But just like in driving school, defensive driving, right? You got to be thinking also, okay, it's 9 o'clock at night. We just got had dinner with my wife. Can I trust that person on the other side of that lane, right? So
Yeah,
it's scary. You're
that is
making me,
scary.
I don't really think about this stuff too much.
Oh yeah, it is. It is kind of crazy, but I think that these cars, they're changing everything y'all are doing, and I will be very interested to watch this and see in the future how insurance rates are affected. I mean, do you think we'll see in the near term, like let's say the 3 to 5 year horizon, do you think if you have a Tesla that can drive itself, that you will see lower or higher insurance rate on that?
Uh, yeah. So that's relative, right? With inflation and everything. I don't know what I'm comparing it to. But I think just speaking auto insurance, yeah, I think it depends on the risk, right? If you're driving across the state, you're driving into the city from a suburb, that's more exposure, right? So it's relative to who you are. But yeah, I see that's, insurance companies, the larger reputable brands want to charge the right rate for the risk, right? So you're going to have those that aren't alert, and drive well. They're going to pay more in premium, and they should, right? If they're more risk, they should pay more. So
Yeah.
They're trying to make it fair, right? They're trying to figure out a way to properly assess risk, and they're utilizing technology, and they're able to accomplish it more now than ever.
Well, like you said, big data, man, and my new word is telematics. I'm going to figure out how to use that in a sentence for the next month, and we're going to talk about it. But no, we'll be interested to see that. So, well, enough on driving. Talk to me about property. I mean, we already touched on the fact that there's not a named peril. I mean, COVID-19 is pretty well named, but it's not a property physical damage peril that is named. But in the event that you are dealing with something like that, you're dealing with Hurricane Harvey, you're dealing with the tornado. We get hurricanes here, you get tornadoes there. What is it that people need to know and be conscientious about when they're working on getting insurance, and how do they handle that if they've suffered a loss
Yeah.
before, they're in a danger zone, if they're in an area that's now defined as a potential danger zone that wasn't previously. I mean, what do you do? How do you handle that for people?
Yeah, so just speaking to property insurance. So as I mentioned, we talked about the hurricanes obviously affecting the coast, but these hailstorms, especially up here in North Texas, it's just been brutal, brutal. We had a tornado recently in Dallas, where if you're driving up the tollway, I couldn't believe it. I looked left and west on the tollway, I looked east, and it was as if a giant steamroller just came through and just mowed down all the houses. So
Wow.
it's specifically the roofs. I wasn't accustomed to this growing up in Houston, right? We didn't get hail very often. When it did hail, it was very unusual,
Yeah, and it
few
was
and
not
far between.
large.
But this happens nearly every year. You're replacing your roofs up here in North Texas every 5 years. So essentially, these roofs have become like warranties from the home insurance. So imagine,
Wow.
trying to keep the rates down while you're going to have, and some of these roofs get up to $50,000 or more. So it's unbelievable up here. So the companies are to take something, and they're doing that by roof scheduling. We're seeing more across the board. Really, all the companies taking up, once that roof gets to a certain age, well, you're going to have a little bit of depreciation on
Mm-hmm.
that. If we talk about satellite imaging, drone footage with claims, more technology, we see that when that hail comes in, it does come directly, vertical, right? It's when they actually have the technology now to see exactly how it was blown into the area.
Wow.
So that helps those adjusters so they know exactly what part of the roof to look at. And so we do see some companies not even in replacing the entire roof, right? But parts of it. So it's been unreal, just experiencing these hailstorms up here. Knock on wood, we haven't had one in a while, but we're moving into hail season, so
That's amazing. That's
buckle
amazing.
up.
What about so hail, wind-driven rain? I mean, the wind-driven rain is kind of a segue into flooding. Hurricane Harvey, Hurricane Katrina. I mean, I think around our part of town, we all have become more knowledgeable about the difference between rising waters and wind-driven rain. Because if you don't have flood coverage, then wind-driven rain. Let's see, wind-driven rain is covered but not rising water, or the other way around. How does that
Yeah,
work?
yeah. So generally speaking, a few years back, the Texas Department of Insurance came out with a standard HO3, which is a broad form policy. This was a great move because there was a lot of coverages. Well, it essentially enabled a lot of the companies to just draft it, use it, standardize it, and then be able to customize the product. So you essentially do want that HO3 broad form policy. But as far as some of those coverages, again, that's what a good agent, because some people, maybe it's a brand new home, um, they're not worried about a pipe seeping behind that wall, right? And because that's likely the house is under warranty. So, but then you have an older home, maybe galvanized plumbing.
Yep.
So then you might want that coverage. So that's where a good agency such as us, make sure, again, you just truly understand what you're getting. With flood insurance, back to your question, the industry is evolving. There's more privatization of flood insurance. So I've got some really unique competitive options, Hartford being one of them. It's moved from FEMA handling flood, and they were constantly running out of money year over year, when Katrina came in, and so now we're seeing the insurance companies actually pick up some of that burden, some with their own products, which is, I think, a great thing.
Yeah.
But flood insurance is a separate policy, not to be confused with sudden and accidental discharge of a pipe, heating system, air conditioning system, or a slow leak, or even a leak in the foundation itself.
Yeah, no, and we went about 4 years ago. I was on vacation with my family and my in-laws, and we got home to their house, and there was water coming out of the garage. And went inside and found there was nearly an inch of water covering their hardwood floors. That we had been out of town for a week, and they had a where the pipe came in to supply the main water supply to the house was copper line. And I don't know if there was like a dielectric fitting or two types of metal, like a bimetallic joint, or if it was just the copper line itself created a pinhole, but it essentially was just a pinhole leak in the wall for a week. And it was catastrophic.
You know what blows my mind is when new home construction now puts the water heaters in the garage, right?
Yeah.
That makes sense, right? Because these things, once they go, right?
Yes.
They're getting better with the technology and less expensive for those tankless options. But traditionally speaking, these homes have them up in the attic, like my house does. So
Mine too.
I had a neighbors who exploded. Literally, they were the same situation, out of town. I'm seeing water drip down the street from their front doorway. I go look through the front door. I see Niagara Falls coming over the top of their second story down to their first. I'm like, oh my gosh! Think of everything that water ruined. I kid you not. It looked like it was a waterfall just coming down from their upstairs.
So do most people? So when I was shopping for insurance coverage, I was cautioned about that some insurance policies they won't have the endorsement that will cover that slow leak in a pipe or inside of a foundation and stuff. I mean, there is some options that you can add and remove from policies that'll cover you on these things, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Because look, everyone's willing to take on a different amount of risk.
Yeah.
So I for one don't care to have that coverage. I don't want to pay for it. I put a little bit aside if something like that were to happen, and I inspect. Right, I go up, check my water heater, really once a month, and I've got technology that shuts off my water heater if something were to go wrong. So it's preventable. It's just like a car, right? Like, sometimes I'll get, is my car, if it breaks down, is there coverage? It's like, well, there are some companies that have some endorsements for that. But you gotta, even then, even with home warranties, they're gonna ask you when you call in for that claim, did you upkeep? Did you service it? Right.
Yeah.
So, you just, coverage is customizable. That's what I love about the independent insurance world. With the different companies, they all offer different things, and just knowing what those are and fitting it, to the right person.
It makes sense. It makes sense, but be sure and ask those questions. I mean, don't think you have it if you don't, and don't pay for it if you don't want it.
Yeah, no, it's easy because this is a high quantity volume job, right? We're insuring a lot of people, but we're not skipping out on steps and following through on our promises when it does come time. And back to the technology piece, we have the unique ability to stay on top of premiums through the technology we have. So it's those things that are really exciting to me into the future.
Tell me about the thing you have that shuts off your water heater. I don't have that. I mean, so is that something that your insurance, like y'all are sending people to companies that sell that stuff to lower insurance rates, or what?
Yeah. Actually, there are some companies out there that are doing that. I think that's so cool. We are seeing that more of the companies willing to make that investment on preventative type technologies that help lower that risk.
Is it a flow meter or something that then has a solenoid that shuts it off?
Yep. So this came with the house when I purchased it. It was an older home, built in '98, but essentially it's just set up on the line on the water heater. So somehow it detects when things are going awry, and it'll just shut it off completely. So it'll just kind of close that line from the water heater.
At the water heater. So I've seen them for like incoming water to like water supply to a house and stuff like that. I haven't really investigated this for a water heater.
So it's got a line that goes down to actually a water tester in the bottom bowl. So essentially, if water starts accumulating down there, that's what it triggers the shut off at the top. Pretty amazing stuff.
That's cool. That's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. And if you got one of those, if you have anybody listening, if you have, a water heater still in your attic, that's a must. Invest in it.
You know, the other thing about water heaters is I'll go look at houses with people that are going to buy them, and I'll look up in the attic and I'll go, oh, look, it has a new water heater. And then I have to remind myself, you can't tell how old a water heater is by looking at it because it's in the attic. A 20-year-old water heater is probably going to look the same 20 years after it was installed as the day it was installed. They don't age sitting in the attic. And
That's
so,
a great point.
you know, you go up
Well,
there
it's
and
funny. So to your point, like, well, usually you can look at,
oh, you can look at a
it,
tag, and these guys write
well,
Sharpie
a
on them
a
now.
good installer will put the tag there. But to your point, like, yeah, at my old home, I replaced the water heaters. Gosh, it wasn't cheap. But after a year, it was already corroding at the top. So I called, the plumber. I was like, "What's the deal?" He's like, "Oh, that's common wear." And I'm like, "I don't know." Like, if that, and to your point, you wouldn't even know that it was only a year old. So.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. That's wild. That's wild. Well, something we were going to talk about, and I don't know if we really touched on it, was distracted driving.
Mhm.
Is this something where back to automobiles, where we got cars that are trying to keep us from being distracted with a little coffee cup that pops up and says time to take a break. I mean, are people gonna get slaughtered if they have some sort of a distracted driving charge on their like a citation for that of some variety, or violating a not texting while driving, or violating a hands-free law in certain cities that have that? I mean, how does that play out?
Yeah, so I'm a proponent of it. Obviously, what comes into question is, freedom, right? On the other hand, but you look at Tesla, for example. Have you seen the TVs in those things? I mean, literally,
Oh,
it's like you
it's
got a flat screen TV.
yeah, it's like a
Um,
21-inch monitor put portrait
awesome.
mode like in the middle of the car. Yeah,
But they all have technology, but they're going to have to continue to get better to shut them down when you're driving. And I hope that the phone industry, in some capacity, enables something, maybe just like with an emergency ability to use it while you're driving if you have to.
yeah.
And then potentially maybe with your insurance company, if you utilize that emergency feature too often, then you're in trouble. But,
Not everything's an
I,
emergency.
distracted driving, these, we didn't have phones when we were growing up, and we're looking at them all the time, and I do worry for the youth. But through education, so a lot of these insurance companies have contracts where parents can sit down with their child, read through it together, and take it seriously.
That's
And then
good.
different tracking abilities that are out there, that I've seen. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a serious thing, because again, I'm worried. I'm worried if I'm on the road with my, I'm trying my best not even to look at my phone. My wife gets on me, but I've gotten a lot better. But it scares me if I'm, to my point earlier, on some of these. I like to say I live up here in the country. If I'm on one of these, 2-lane highways, and all of a sudden, someone swerves over for just that right time, that's what scares me. So I'm a
You bet.
proponent for
My car,
evolution of that.
my car doesn't have Apple CarPlay, but I use the Hey Siri send a message thing a lot, or Hey Siri call XYZ. For a long time, I've had the thing pop up and auto reply to people. I had it when I had an Android. Android had it like every feature ever. Android had it for 5 years before Apple did, where it says I'm driving right now. Send me call me if it's really that important. And I think that as more cars age out of being owned, and then everybody buys new cars, and more new cars have got these assistive systems, whether it's as simple as the blind spot indication system, or it's the lane keeping system, or it's the progressive or adaptive cruise control, Apple CarPlay. I mean, these are all good things that help people be safer
Right.
drivers.
Yeah, the faster, the insurance or the technology companies can make these things more intuitive to adapt. So you mentioned, Apple Play. So that's really easy to use Apple Play, right? You can
Yeah.
plug it in, the screen automatically adapts to it. You're familiar with the face of
My
it. It
my
stays.
phone just started going, "Hey Siri, text XYZ." Like, it literally just took that whole conversation, and it's reciting that to me. So I don't know, XYZ, if you got a
That's
message, I
funny.
apologize. It was like this long of like something that I had just written, I guess. So
Yeah. So yeah. So the more like I said, the more intuitive, easier it is for people to adapt to those technologies. The more utilization you'll have, from
yeah,
people.
for sure, for sure. So, well, all right, I got one more question for you. Tell
Yeah.
me tell me a war story that you've dealt with. I mean, you've already dealt with Niagara Falls coming down your neighbor's house, and I mean, I want to hear though. I mean, what do you guys deal with? What's your
War
insurance
story.
war story?
I would have to probably go back to the days when I was in the trenches early on as an insurance agent. You know, I've you name it, I've seen it. So I guess yeah, just going to different homes. And I love meeting all kinds of people. Right, it's the most fun about my job is meeting great people. But I was on this appointment one time, and this guy, and I'm not a gun guy, but this guy was cleaning his nine in front of me while I was going through his life insurance policies. I mean, I knew he was a professional and he worked for, I don't know, one of the big accounting firms. So I had a good idea he wasn't going to shoot me or himself, hopefully.
Yeah.
But yeah, it
Wow.
was a little nerve wracking. He's sitting there, polishing with the oil, putting it together. So.
Well, Adam, the next time we get together, I'm going to take you to shoot guns so I can turn you into a gun guy.
Well, and then there's the Ebola story, but we don't have enough time in the day to get into that one.
Ebola. Wow. Wow. You guys really deal. I mean, you deal with everything that affects people.
Oh man, I like to say that I've seen everything, but the minute I say something like that, something else pops up, and
That's insane.
never seems to amaze me.
That's insane. Wow. Well, man, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you.
This is a lot of good content. I mean,
Good.
obviously we're cities apart here, but everything you're talking about is relevant to all of
Absolutely.
our viewers. So that's
Yeah, well, hey, we
amazing.
really appreciate the opportunity. Congratulations again. I see this taking off for you. Like I said, you know so much about technology and real estate, and you're a very engaging personality. So I wish you all the best, and I hope we definitely can stay in touch
You bet,
as
man.
your show grows.
I'll check back in with you. Thank you. I appreciate what you said. So stay with me for a minute. I'm going to sign us out here.
All
But
right,
thanks again, Adam, for joining
all right.
us.
Take care.
All
Thank
right,
you.
man. Thank you. So, all right, y'all. Well, listen, you heard it. That was Adam Bamford with the Bamford Insurance Agency. Had a great conversation with him about insurance and all facets of your life. And I really appreciate you joining me. Like I said, I'm really glad. Or earlier, I said I'm really glad to have this show back up again. I've got it live. Something I figured out is I really don't like recording these things and editing them for 6 hours. So I decided I'm just going to use all this equipment that can mix all these streams together and do it live and operate this like a one-man band. And we're gonna keep this thing going. So thanks for joining me. I'll be back on Thursday. And stay safe and wash your hands.